graduates to have once they leave us at undergraduate level. Nowhere in there actually appears sustainability, even though in our strategic goal in the organisation we're moving to a new campus which is related as a green sustainable campus, yet within our graduate attributes we don't actually link it into sustainability into that. When you look across the curricula, I'll come back to that slide if I just slip on a little bit further here and look at the curricula in our institution. You know, it's embedded in actual modules, but it actually doesn't appear in terms of the approach that we take. So there's differing approaches in terms of actually what we do. So we don't have it embedded, and I would make the argument that we should have it embedded in what it is we actually do. So again, I'll just go back. Sorry about this. So the issue for me in terms of what I'm researching is, you know, the construction sector, or the architecture, engineering, construction sector, are telling us that the graduates should have graduate attributes, and one of them should be sustainability. You know, they want competent graduates who have the skill and knowledge in relation to that. So the aim of this research is to look and investigate what the industry considers as important in relation to those skills, but also then what can higher education do in relation to embedding those skills. So with the view to creating a framework that will actually help both the AEC sector, but also education, and then in turn students. So you know, the industry is saying, or society is saying some of these elements, and again, Professor Egbu related to those this morning. You know, whose responsibility is it? There are actual individuals out there who actually indicate that, well, it's other people's problem. You know, big countries like the US, like China, should be the ones to go first. And then there's people identifying that, well, actually, we couldn't really worry, we're not really worried about sustainability, so they're not really bothered about it. The context is really, really important in terms of who the stakeholders are, in terms of built environment education. In terms of higher education, there are differing approaches. Now, if I just come down here, you know, some institutions, you'll see it where they embed it across the program, where all academics or faculty are actually delivering sustainability in the subjects that they teach. So if somebody is doing law, within the law module, they actually get reference to sustainability. Or if they're doing economics, they're looking at sustainable economic ways of doing things. Other institutions take a stand in terms of standing alone. Those programs that are accredited by professional bodies, the professional bodies' awareness of the need for sustainability, and we had mentioned today in terms of what CIOB is doing, well, they're driving that through their accreditation process in terms of pushing in higher education institutions to ensure that what they're delivering is sustainable and linked to sustainability. I've shared the curricula that I've looked at in terms of that. The AEC sector again just wants industry-ready, complete, ready-to-go graduates. They want people who, in their terms, hit the ground running, and they want individuals to be actually industry-ready. They want them with soft skills, they want them to be adaptable, and they want them with current knowledge. So in terms of that, it's a really big ask. This research is presenting what industry has given back, what students have said, and what academics have said. And again, this is ongoing research. In terms of the comparison between industry and students and educators, so the essential sustainability knowledge was a question asked, and you can see there what industry expects is, for example, the skill or the knowledge around biomimicry was ranked highest. Green building construction means and methods was ranked highest there. But you can see the academics didn't actually rank that high, the biomimicry did, and the students also. So there's a big gap between there on that particular first one in terms of industry expects them to have current knowledge, where the academics are actually looking at principles of green building construction. So they're looking at the principles around it rather than the actual contents. So it's an important element to say, emerging out of that research there is that actually there's a differential or a gap between what industry expects and what we should be delivering in terms of what we are delivering in terms of sustainable education. In terms of the feedback on green building rating systems, you can see there, well, students have identified LEED and BREEAM as ranked really, really high. And also then industry is expecting them. So they're expecting them to come out with a knowledge of LEED and a knowledge of BREEAM. So possibly gone are the days where we actually, these people get those accreditations around LEED and BREEAM afterwards. There's an expectation possibly that they actually should be getting them within the programme. Some qualitative feedback from the industry is that team building approach should be included. So again, the whole collaborative nature. Sustainable solutions through real projects is an important element. So they again come to the industry being able to solve these problems. The graduates should have the necessary skill to implement sustainable practice. We rely on graduates to address the knowledge gap that we have. So industry is indicating in some instances that they have a knowledge gap and they actually want these innovative, creative graduates to fill that gap for them, to actually upskill them in those areas. And then I suppose that the last comment there is an insightful one. There should be some incentive to employing graduates where they can learn the cutting edge applications of new practices. So there's possibly an industry a practitioner or a company who's indicating that they're willing to work with the graduates when they come out. From the student's perspective or the education perspective, it's about sustainable principles. They should be embedded in all courses. There should be standalone courses also. The graduates lack of experience is made up with innovative and creative ways, which I just mentioned to earlier, in terms of solving problems. And it's about developing a competent graduate with sustainability knowledge. So that's really what we should be moving towards. So they're the two main outcomes of the research. There is a gap, and that continues to be there. But there needs to be a greater commitment from built environment education programs to close that gap. Further research is necessary, and this is ongoing, so we're now moving to more qualitative focus groups and interviews with the industry. So there's a lot done, but actually more to do in relation to this. It's ongoing. I leave you with Jensen Derrick's quote in terms of endgame, the problem of civilization. I suppose the bottom part to me is the big part. We need to take account of what people's wants and needs are, but actually we need to actually sustain civilization, sustain society. So thank you for listening. I suppose it's a question of whether the glass is half empty or half full. I would like to think in the work that I'm doing, we're moving from it's half full. We're actually moving towards a half-full position. So thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you very much, Lloyd, for a very informative presentation. When you talked about the sustainability principles and their integration within the curriculums, it's there and the students know about them. But when it comes to implementing what they have learned, they need more knowledge about more detailed skills, for example, building performance simulation. Do you think that it would be appropriate to introduce such sophisticated tools to the students at an undergrad level, or shall we wait until they graduate and go, for example, to for example, master's or something like that?
Well, I think it really depends on the level of detail, but yes, I would think, for example, if you're going to be a lead AP or you're going to be a BREEAM qualified person, that usually is after graduation. Certainly there's scope for postgraduate work to be done in actually working with people in terms of developing their skill. But to me, I see education as a means to actually educate people. I see the likes of BREEAM and LEED and green building assessment tools, or introducing a PHPP piece of software as training, and that to me would be done afterwards. But it's about giving them the tools in terms of the principles around sustainability, the principles around, the topic or the subject areas, materials and the usage of materials, and that they can be, knowledgeable in terms of where they might use them, but the detail around knowing that material is done afterwards.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the accreditation bodies you mentioned in the presentation in US. What are these accreditation bodies, and are they focused on construction discipline only, or they have certain applications in architecture and civil engineering?
Well, there's a couple of different accreditation bodies in the US. The ones that I'm familiar with is the ACCE, the American Construction Education or Construction Management Group, and ASCE is the professional body that represents kind of engineering and construction in the US, and they have accreditation processes. So for example, the CM program, or the Construction Science program in Oklahoma, which I would be familiar with, they are ACCE accredited. There's also a group called ABET, which accredit engineering orientated programs. So to meet their requirements, they have learning outcomes, and they would have, for example, a sustainability learning outcome. So you need to demonstrate within the curriculum what's actually included in terms of actually giving the students knowledge around sustainability. So for example, Oklahoma have introduced a sustainability class, the one that I teach, and it's principle based, and it's to meet the requirement of ACCE.
Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. Please, for the sake of students of knowledge management like me, can you please give us an optional definition that clearly distinguishes between knowledge, competency, and skill? And since your research actually showed that there is a widening gap between the gown and town, in what way can this gap be bridged effectively between the town and gown, between the industry and the academic?
Sorry, between the town and?
The town and gown, between the industry and the academics. How do we bridge this widening gap between them? Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of knowledge is knowledge of sustainable practice, and then skill would be maybe the implementation, so actually implementing that or demonstrating how that would be implemented in the industry. And competence would be showing that you can actually do it within the criteria that are set around, the sustainable practice, for example. So knowledge is actually, getting the knowledge around something. Skill is actually performing the skill of actually applying it, And the competence is shown by actually applying the skill based on the knowledge, and the knowledge being linked to the body of knowledge in that particular area. So that's what I mean in relation to those. In terms of the gap between the urban, was it urban you said? Oh, sorry, the industry and academia, there is a gap. So there's a responsibility on the academia to present their applied research in a way that the actual industry can actually engage with it. And I do believe groups like ARCOM, the Associated Researchers in Construction Management, have that under consideration currently and are actually working with actual industry to actually try and address that in terms of the way they present the actual academic research. Yeah. So there is that chasm between the two, but I think that both are actually working together. Also, it's about sharing that knowledge with industry. So for example, some of the industry in Ireland that I've engaged with, I've actually spent time with them in terms of showing them the results from what we found.
In the table that you showed us, which shows the gap, not this one, the one previous one, yeah. Where you have high difference in ranks between education and industry, do you see a common thread between the three knowledge areas that you have identified as the one with the biggest gap? And why do you deal with these knowledge areas as independent of each other? If I look at the right-hand side and I look at differences 8, 5, and 5, the highest one, and I put them aside and I look at the common thread, it's actually they are related to each other. So there must be something that's saying to me here that there is a gap in that common thread between those three areas, and they are not, as far as I see it, they are not independent of each other.
No.
So I'm not sure if this is just it's a comment rather than a question. I'm wondering if you have looked at it that way.
We haven't looked at it that way, no. But that's a good point that you make. It's something actually we should maybe address and look to, yeah.
Thank you, Lloyd.
That's
Thank you
great.
very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Adil is the manager of Academic Staff Development Unit at the Applied Science University. He's an assistant professor. He has a fellowship from the Higher Education Academy. His research interests are human resources, strategic management, higher education, and training. So, welcome, Dr. Adil.
Okay, guys. We're running out of time, so I don't think that we'll have or will allow any questions, right? Lucky me. Oh, please.
We can reduce the presentation.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Okay. This conference is about sustainability and future. Okay? I'll take you out from engineering, agriculture, and all those technical expressions. When I hear the expression future or sustainability, I imagine a human being. Okay, I'm a fan of what I'm doing. I'm fanatic to what I'm doing. Okay? Machines make things possible. People make things happen. So anytime we're talking about sustainability or future, I only imagine a human being. Our research, actually it's a joint research between me and Dr. Faiza, is about the competencies, the core competencies of academics in teaching in higher education. Well, literally, when you go for a job interview in any university, okay, you will find that they have already the requirements that they measure your capabilities on, and they would say that if you're fit for these capabilities or not. But how about listening to the other side of the equation, the student, the perspective of students in the competencies of academics? Academics in higher education and institution play a vital role in the educational process. This is a very important role anybody can do, shaping the character and the personality of the future generations. So we gotta be real careful on what we are doing with our students. Okay, to measure the core competencies of the academics, we got Applied Science University as a sample, and we identified 4, based to our opinion and to the most of the literature reviews, the most important core competencies academics should have. Professional competencies, competencies related to use of technology in higher education, competence related to the humane, not the human, but humane with E at the end, capabilities of the academic, and the last thing is the core competencies related to how to conduct evaluation and assessment of the higher education students. The main objectives of our paper was 2 actually, but actually we had a lot later on. The first one was to check to what extent our academics at the university possess the core competencies that we are talking about, and to come out with a conceptual framework with recommendations to be given or to be submitted to the top management to be taken into consideration in the future hiring of academics and in the development plan of the academic member. The methodology that we used, actually, we have based our methodology on 2 pillars. The first one was using a questionnaire on about 270 students from all the colleges of the university, the 3 colleges at that time, because actually now we have the engineering And the second methodology was the interviews. We conducted interviews with the deanship of student affairs and some students in the student council. The sample size was not that big, but the thing is, we conducted our study during the summer semester, which is very tight. If you're in Bahrain, you will notice that the summer semester is tight in time. So we didn't have much time, so we depended on a small number compared to the target population. The response rate was 72%. And apart from the demographic variables, all the other statements were measured using the Likert type scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, strongly agree would have 5, and strongly disagree would have 1. And data was analyzed using the statistical package for social science, or SPSS. We tested 4 hypotheses concerned with the competencies that we're talking about, professional competencies. Okay, we're talking about the tested hypotheses that we used: professional competencies, technological competencies, humane competencies, and evaluation and assessment competencies. The statistics and discussion, the primary data collection was, as you know, 270 sample individuals out of almost 3,000 students, okay? And we used this. The selected descriptive variables were as follows: the student gender, the student employment status, the student age that varies between 17, 20, 21, 24, 25, 29, and above 30, and student study period at the university that varied between 0 to 1 year and all the way to 4 years. The results of the study showed no significant conflict of opinions from the core competencies of a good lecturer as selected by the authors in the presented questionnaire survey. But the thing is, we had all types of correlation between the sample. Correlation between the variables was carried out, and the results showed that there is no correlation in some time. Some shows a negative significant correlation and a positive significant correlation. This depends on the risk. Okay. The finds and the conclusion. Not even one statement received close to 4 in total average. You know, this is a very important indicator because actually most of the statements received 3 plus something. There are some related variables in the faculty evaluation process that should be considered as an integrated process when developing the evaluation process. The student assessment of their teacher is only one component of an important process, and the entire evaluation system, including any rating forms, should be designed to meet a specific set of specific purposes. And the recommendations included adopting the framework of the Higher Education Academy, or the HEA UK PSF framework. Conducting partnership with the students should be located at the heart of the evaluation process. And based on the limitations that we experienced during the preparation of such paper, we recommend actually further researches to be conducted on these findings or some sort of comparative studies between this and some other variables and papers in the future. Thank you. Right?
Thank you, Dr. Adel. Thank you. There is time for one very much focused question.
No, we don't have time.
No, there is one.
We don't have time.
Time for one.
Guys, we need
Very
to go
much
home.
focused.
We don't have time.
So you're lucky. Thank you very much.
Thank you.